Welcome everybody to the Center for the Study of Tennesseans and More. I'm the director, Dr. Chris Magra, and it's the center's mission to research, preserve, and share the stories of people in our region who've been involved in wars from 1700 to present. And we're privileged today to have retired Major General Stephen Clark in for an interview. And there's a lot to talk about today. I wanted to start by just establishing your bona fides as a Tennessean. Your dad was born and raised in Elizabethton, Tennessee, and you attended the University of Tennessee and your dad attended the University of Tennessee.
Correct.
Your wife attended the University of Tennessee. Any other connections to Tennessee?
So my aunt attended the University of Tennessee, my mother-in-law attended the University of Tennessee, father-in-law attended ETSU, but was the director of financial aid here at UT, and then your sister attended ETSU as well. So
Okay.
yeah, and our families. So I grew up mainly in Germany, and then came here to only to find out as we started dating that our grandmothers shared the same best friend. And didn't know each other.
Wow. It is a small world.
It is a small world.
We consider anybody to be a Tennessean who is either born here, who has lived in Tennessee for any duration of time. So you certainly classify as a Tennessean. And we'll get into your time at UT and the Air Force ROTC program. I want to spend a little bit of time on your childhood. My understanding is you were born in Kentucky?
In Texas.
Okay.
I was actually in Texas, but we were only there for about 6 months.
Okay.
So
your father was military?
Correct. He was a career Army officer, spent 30 years in the Army, retired as a colonel, and they're now retired up in Williamsburg, Virginia.
And so born in Texas, only spent a short amount of time there, and then where'd you go from Texas?
So we moved 14 times in 17 years.
Yeah.
So moved a lot. By the time I got to UT, it was move number 18, I think, by the time I came over from Germany. But we lived, so Texas, Kentucky, spent 3 or 4 tours in Germany with my parents. We were in Fort Knox. We were in Washington, D.C. twice. Yeah.
What do you remember of all that moving around? Did it affect your childhood positively, negatively, any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So actually I just responded to a questionnaire. So Nathan White, who was the son of Andy White, who was a classmate of mine also in ROTC, is doing his master's degree, and part of the discussion, or his research, is about the effects of deployments on children. So, and much more. And I think it's very important to today's events because we spent the last 20 years in combat, and a lot of the folks retiring now, that's their entire career, was overseas in combat. So, and how does it affect the kids? But as I was thinking through my answers to that and thinking about, okay, how did I grow up, my brother, how did we grow up, and what happened is, my general belief is children wind up on one or two ends of the spectrum. There's very few in the middle. They are either come out very self-sufficient and capable, but then also probably more reserved because they had to be self-sufficient because they always moved. So that the underpinning of their childhood friends just isn't there because they're constantly going. On the other side is a negative reaction where they have challenges with schooling, integrating with society and with people and stuff like that. They just, because of all of that. And it's, every family is different. We recruit from all walks of life across the country, all socioeconomic statuses, educational backgrounds, comes together in what I would offer is probably one of the largest meritocracies in the world. For an organization, the Department of Defense, that's over 3 million strong, that's a large organization. We do pretty well from a meritocracy. It's not perfect, but I think we do pretty well. But when you get that mixing bowl in, the family structures are as varied as you can imagine, and the relationships are as varied as you can imagine, and how parents cope with the stresses of the constant deployments back and forth and so in that pace. And not all parts of the military deploy at the same rate. So there's sometimes a view of inequity between who's deploying, whose not deploying, whose parents are always home, whose parents are always gone, and stuff like that. But for me growing up, I think I wound up on the left-hand side of that as being fairly independent, fairly reserved, standing on my own. I'm an extreme introvert. So on a scale of 1 to 50 at the Center for Creative Leadership, I hold the record of having a grand total score of 1. You know, Cynthia and I on the top of a mountain away from everybody else is my happy place.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where we really enjoy. It's not that I don't enjoy engaging with people, but it wears me out after a period of time.
Yeah.
It just sucks the energy out of you. But I also think it was a great opportunity in moving around. And my mother's German. They got married on this first assignment when he went to Germany. But we got to travel around the world and live in Europe, which gives you the opportunity to take a look at your own country from somebody else's perspective and from afar looking from the outside in. And then when you're here, you're looking from the inside out. And I think that balances your perspective a lot more, which then later on I think helped me in my military career because we were constantly traveling overseas in combat zones and you're having to deal with all the various cultures.
Yeah, and so your dad's from Tennessee and your mom's from Germany. Did you
Correct.
grow up speaking German?
My brother was born there and he was fluent in German. That was his first language, is
Yeah.
my second language.
Yeah.
So I did speak fairly well.
Yeah.
It's been 40 some odd years, so I speak less well now.
Brothers and sisters?
One brother, he was here at UT, 2 years older. He was here at UT with me, but unfortunately he died in a car accident out on Alcoa Highway while we were here.
Gotcha. And did having a brother though help you with all that moving around?
Yeah.
Gives you some friend, some
Right, I mean,
somebody
they
to
give
lean
you,
on or-
we were only 2 years apart,
Yeah.
so it wasn't a generational difference, but we were close enough that we could, throw punches at each other and still be friends afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Our 2 daughters are 5 years apart. They went through 3 high schools and a myriad of other schools. They're still best friends,
Yep.
so.
So all that moving around, and then you came to the Air Force ROTC program here at UT. What made you come to UT? Was it the fact that your dad had been here, and why the Air Force?
Okay. So.
Those are two big questions.
Those are, yeah, so having grown up in the military, we spent one tour living outside of Washington, D.C. on the economy among this. My father worked at the Pentagon and then at the White House in the Carter administration. He was the military assistant to President Carter at the time. That was my only real experience on the civilian economy. We lived in base housing and stuff like that. So I grew up within the military culture and understood that I did not understand civilian life. That was way outside my comfort zone. So I think doing that. My father was an Army aviator, helicopter pilot, and being a son, you always want to challenge your dad, right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to fly something faster than you.
Oh yeah.
And that's not going to be in the Army.
Yeah.
So I think I want to go to the Air Force. How I wound up here at UT was the academies offered me the prep schools. So I was an athlete, Eagle Scout, academic 3.3 straight through. It didn't matter where we were. I was right there. So not the rocket scientist.
What was your sport?
I did a lot of, I played football for 4 years, swam for 2. We moved to Germany, they didn't have a swim team, so I picked up wrestling. I ran track and played tennis. So I just loved being outside. I wasn't great at any of them, but I was above average in a lot of them, but it was fun,
Yeah.
right? So when they offered me the prep school, I was like, I don't think I want to spend 5 years getting someplace in 4, so I think I'll try ROTC, apply for the scholarship. I was an alternate. How I wound up at Tennessee was my dad asked me, we were living north of Frankfurt, Germany. He says, okay, what's plan B? Rocket scientists didn't have a plan B. It was before campus tours and stuff. I said, I don't know.
Because that was your high school experience, was in Frankfurt.
Was at Frankfurt High School, yeah. So we were back and forth all the time. So I had elementary school, some middle school, and then last 2 years of high school in Germany, in a DoD school. So he goes, okay, in-state tuition, you're going to Knoxville, Tennessee, and there was no internet, no Google, so I pulled out Jane's and looked at the atlas and go, here's Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah.
And jumped on a C-5 out of Ramstein, landed in Dover, Delaware, and took a bus to Knoxville. My aunt lived out in Sevierville, so it wasn't completely dislocated from anything.
And this was in the 1980s?
This was summer of '82.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you came here, you're Air Force ROTC. Can you talk a little bit about that experience at the ROTC program here?
Yeah, so the department was over at what was Stokely Athletic Center at the time before they made it a parking garage.
It's a parking garage. Yeah. A lot of changes here at UT.
Yes. Yeah. So ROTC was terrific because it gave me a place to land and a community that I understood the culture and what was going on. I could relate to that. Coming to a civilian university in the middle of a town I didn't know, I wound up in the, I think, Greyhound bus station and walked across town with my 2 suitcases, walked onto campus. I was crossing Gay Street and a truck goes by with 2 young ladies and it whistled at me. I thought, okay, I've arrived. This is going to be awesome, right? This is going to be great.
Yeah.
And it was. It turned out to be really terrific. But the ROTC department gave me a place to land and a home to land. And since my parents were still living in Germany at the time, the cadre understood that and kind of took me in a bit, which was greatly appreciated. Because, I mean, you're a long way from home. There was no internet. There weren't cell phones. It cost you a couple bucks a minute to call home. So I talked to my parents maybe once a month, if that, and then you figured it out. So that really, really helped.
Yeah, my wife and I just talked about we're pre-internet, pre-computers, all this stuff that nowadays you think, how do we live without those things?
Right.
Yeah, and so you're here, you're in the Air Force ROTC program. When you're starting to finish up and starting to think about your career beyond and where you want to go, and you're filling out your wish list, what are you putting down? What are you thinking is going to be the future for you?
I was pretty single track focused.
Yeah.
So I think it's still the same way. You do your first 2 years in ROTC, and then you kind of select where you're going to go or apply and get tracked to that. So right before the end of your sophomore year is when that comes down, and I was very fortunate to get a pilot slot, which is what I wanted. In that year, you can check with Frankie, but I think we got the most pilot slots of any university in the nation. So very, very lucky on my part that happened and that I got that slot. And then you went through flight screening, and I was actually a guinea pig down at Hondo, Texas for a military level flight screening program, because most ROTC cadets went to the local FBO and got their local training. They'd set up essentially a undergraduate pilot training regimen, and within 2 or 3 weeks you went through and got to solo and everything else, and that was a great opportunity to do that. So I got my pilot slot, and that was my focus. One of the neat things that occurred, and this is where the cadre matters, is to how into the cadets and helping them out can change somebody's life. So I came here in the College of Engineering. Before I even got here, I decided that's actually not really what I wanted to do. So I wound up in the College of Architecture. Okay, that's not really what I want to do. And I talked to my advisor here at RTC, and he goes, well, what do you really like? I said, I love history and politics. He goes, okay, political science, right? He goes, but your scholarship is a technical degree. Political science and math are in the humanities and the liberal arts, so you're a math major now, so you can keep your scholarship. When you get your pilot slot, we're taking your scholarship because we don't need the scholarship to entice you to go to pilot training. And then he switched to political science, and he had worked out all 4 years.
That advisement.
Yeah, he worked out all 4 years of my classes, and I didn't lose a single credit.
Yeah, it's that way today. I mean, students don't know how to navigate the system.
Yeah, and it was
sure.
terrific.
Yeah. Now, had you met your wife at this point?
So at that point, yes. So we actually.
And she's in the room while this interview is going on. So
yes.
She will fact check us.
So this is my first wife.
Yes.
Right. So we actually had freshman chemistry together up on the hill. And that's when you're with 300 of your closest friends, right? And so that's when I first saw her. I was sitting on one side of the auditorium. I saw her walking down the aisle on the other side. pretty cute.
Yep.
You know,
I
followed
met
her.
my wife the same way. I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about.
Followed her down. She went to about row 5, went in the middle, sat next to a guy, and I actually happened to be a guy in Army ROTC, but her sweatshirt had Eddie on the back. I go, well, it must be Eddie. Eddie's her dad. It was his college sweatshirt. So I got to complain to him that he cost me 6 months. His daughter there.
Stress, yeah.
But then we met at a fraternity party 6 months later. She was talking with a friend of mine, and I walked into the band room, and I recognized her. And just went up and talked, and we've been dating ever since.
Ever since.
Yeah.
And that was mid-'80s?
So that was the spring of '83 is when we actually met, started dating.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so then, after the Air Force ROTC, you're in Texas?
Correct, yeah, so we went to flight school in Lubbock, Texas.
Yeah.
I went,
Flattest land I've ever been in my life, Lubbock, Texas. As far as I can see, when I got
Yes.
into Lubbock, I remember them telling me, you know, there could be dust storms. I said, say what now?
yeah, and you may not see the house across the street.
Yeah, yeah.
And the tumbleweeds will take the door off your car. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Lubbock was a neat place, it was about the size of Knoxville, but the interstate ringed around it, and Reese Air Force Base was off to the west end side. And yeah, we went there. I went first. You finished up your degree and then came out. Spent a year in flight school there, and then another 4 years as a flight instructor. So they kept me there to teach afterwards.
Okay. And what are you thinking at this point? Are you and your wife married? And are you thinking about a family and
Yeah.
that sort of, or are you thinking about this career at that point? Are you still thinking you want to do better than your dad and have this amazing career that's going to trump his career?
Yes.
Yeah. I kind of knew the answer to that one, yeah.
Yes. So Cynthia and I graduated and was commissioned on Friday. We got married on Saturday. So it was because we knew we were going to flight school, and we wanted to kind of get the whole living together settled out before we took off for that adventure. We were not contemplating children at the time. I think it was, you mind if I say it? When we were dating, she said, if you want to have children, you need to find somebody else, because no kids, no how, no way, not happening. Right?
My wife said the same thing.
Yeah, she did. She said, I just don't think I can handle kids.
Yeah.
And then about 3 years in, the bug hit, and then it just took a while. So yeah, we were in that transition. What was kind of neat from a family history perspective is just between Lubbock and Amarillo, so running north on the interstate, is a little town called Tulia, Texas. It's in an S-turn in the road is Tulia, Texas, in the El Camino Hotel. And I know that because we got to stay there, because Hale County, Texas, which Tulia is right in the middle, is named after her family. The Hales are part of the family.
Okay.
So-
Well, I was going to ask you if I figured you moving around, that's no big deal. I didn't know for your wife if moving from Tennessee to Texas was a big deal. But if she has family there,
It was distant.
distant.
It was
Distant.
distant family, yeah.
yeah,
He promised me we would see the world, so I was all excited.
you were excited to do that. We're starting that adventure.
West Texas is a foreign country to some.
Yes, yes, amen to that. So then in your mind, you're starting this career and you're a flight instructor in Texas. What are you thinking is going to be next for you?
So I had, like a lot of young pilots, thought I wanted to fly a fighter aircraft. I had graduated at the top of my class, and you were supposed to get your first choice. And then I got told later on as well, if you own the candy store, you can pick who you want. We wanted you to instruct first. Like, okay. So I stayed there and did it. And it was a good learning experience. We had met some great people, and I learned a lot about flying, because students are actively trying to kill you. So you learned a lot about how to fly and how to save the aircraft. But then, world history changes. The wall came down. The Cold War started to close out. People were pontificating about the end of history, if you remember that term, right?
Yeah.
This is the end of history.
Yeah.
Peace was breaking out everywhere. We were drawing down. So I wanted to fly fighter. I wanted to do air to ground or air to mud.
Yeah.
I didn't really care for air to air. I'd gone out for a buddy wing exchange out at Holloman, and the air-to-air stuff was just painful. And they told you, hey, if you ever actually need to do actual air-to-air maneuvers, you've already screwed up once. This is to save your life and get you out. So I was like, okay.
And the end of the Cold War and the scaling down, that didn't deter you?
No. Well, you know, I had a commitment, a 10-year commitment to give back. So I was going to take at least another assignment, and we were still interested in doing something. I never really saw past 20 years. You know, I never projected myself. It never crossed my mind, hey, I want to be a general officer, this, that, and the other. I wanted to be the ops director for a squadron, of an operational squadron, the director of operations. That was kind of from what I understood at the time, and I'm a lieutenant, so lieutenants don't understand a whole lot about the big Air Force at the time, and nor should they. I mean, they have their focus on being great technical people. But so I was just looking, okay, what's available to me that's of interest? And since the fighters are drawing down, and the drop that I was in, as the assignments came down, there wasn't a fighter available. There was as I remember, it was a B-1 and an AC-130 gunship, were the only two what I considered combat aircraft. And that's not pejorative for the airlifters or the tankers and stuff like that. It's just, I really wanted to go do something like that. And Mike DePerier, who was a friend of mine from there, had taken a gunship a couple months prior. So I looked up in Janes again, pre-internet. So I looked up in Janes, and here's this large C-130 aircraft bristling with weapons sitting out the sideline. B-1s are going to do air shows from now on because peace broke out. This might actually get to go do something. And the way I explain it to folks is, I always wanted the opportunity to dance on the world stage a little. What I mean by that is, later on, if we have grandchildren, is to have your grandchild on your knee, open up a history book and say, I got to do this, and here's my picture, but here's all the other people with me and what they were about and what we got to do and to experience. So
now, did your dad do that with you, or did your grandfather or anybody else who served do that for you, that kind of put that thought in your head?
So my father got into Army aviation as it was just getting started, helicopters. But he flew one tour in Korea after the war, flying the DMC, and then he did 2 active tours in Vietnam. He does not talk about it much at all. He does. I think a lot of the people who went to Vietnam don't really talk about it much, and I think part of that is not only what they experienced, but what they experienced when they came home.
Yeah. We've interviewed quite a few Vietnam vets, and they is to welcome them home because they didn't get that.
Yeah, and we got to experience. We went out to Dulles. If you don't mind me diverging a little bit, we went out to Dulles Airport, which is just down the road from us. And they bring in the veterans to go tour the memorials and stuff like that. And first, it was originally designed for the World War II veterans, and then you're getting the Korean veterans and more of the Vietnam era veterans. The World War II veterans, when they come off, they're used to the ticker tape parade a bit. They're all smiles and this, that, and the other. The Korean veterans were a little bit, yeah, this is cool, okay. They didn't get quite that reception. The Vietnam era veterans almost look like they're gun shy. And their escorts, if they're in wheelchairs, and they're normally a set of kids, they're in tears. It's the first time anybody's ever said thank you.
I know, right?
And I mean, it moves you.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
hard.
Yeah.
So my father's part of that generation, and I think it's still hard for him.
Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you a little story. I mean, as aviators, you have a dark sense of humor, okay? Because death is just a move of the stick away, and you make a mistake or whatever. So, as a helicopter pilot, he flew medevacs, and then also the troop insertions. But as medevac chopper pilot, so if you read the book or see the movie We Were Soldiers Once and Young, in the El Dorado Valley, he flew a lot of those. He wasn't so smart one time when he dug the bullet out of the top of the helicopter that it ricocheted off his helmet and sent it back to my mom. But to him,
that's dark. Yeah,
but to him,
yeah.
it was, I'm still alive.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Sure.
I am still alive. I'm invincible at this point in time.
Yeah. So maybe your dad not talking about it and his reticence, maybe that had some small influence in you wanting, as you say, to be on the world world stage for your
Yeah,
grandkids.
well, I got to watch him as well. So yes, I think it did. There was that mystique, that mysteriousness there, and then there was that competition. But he finished out part of his operation career as in armor, in tanks. So he commanded the 3rd Brigade, 3rd Armored Division, which was the lead brigade designed to dive into the Fulda Gap to stop the Soviet horde. They were the speed bump. This is I think it's 8,000 person brigade, and the life expectancy of that brigade was 10 minutes. But that was his moment in history in the Cold War, and that's where my brother and we grew up with that. That was real, and he wound up in Berlin before the wall came down, and we visited and went with him there. So it was real that any day the Cold War would go hot. And I think, and that's what got me involved, I think, in history. I studied the Soviet Union while I was here at UT, a lot, Euro-Soviet relations and things like that. So I think that was a natural draw onto the international.
So even though you're aware of the international goings on and the end of the Cold War, end of history, and the de-escalation of militaries, you're still gung-ho and you still have this fire in your belly to get into the fight somehow, some way, and make your mark for your grandkids.
Yeah, I think we still want to do that. And if I'm completely honest, I didn't have a plan B. I didn't know what else I would. I didn't have the imagination. I didn't have the understanding or the experience to go, what else would be of greater interest to me in the civilian world. I just had no touchstone for that. There's a lot of great stuff going on out there. I just didn't know it, didn't understand it.
So you found this picture of this gunship, and
Yes.
you thought, this is the one for me. How did you make that happen?
So that's a little bit of a story, because that was in 1992, before Special Operations was cool. The services, in fact, it was shortly after Grenada and the Holloway Commission and the stand-up of U.S. SOCOM was occurring right about that time. The services were not enamored with SOCOM standing up. It was going to take their resources, this, that, and the other. There was a big fight going on. But within the Air Force, SOF was not cool. They were the redheaded stepchildren. It was a tiny, tiny little community. In fact, when we first got to Hurlburt Field, there were 4 squadrons, and just about all of Air Force Special. I think there were 2 overseas squadrons and then 4 there. That was it. So when I requested the assignment, and the way Air Training Command took care of assignments for their flight instructors was all the wing commanders would go down to San Antonio, sit around a table, throw the files out of their people, rank ordered, and then they'd score, okay, round 1, score them one through however many, round 2, 1 through however many, this, that, and the other. So the wing commander would have to go down there, and I'm a lieutenant. And I tell my squadron commander, I had a really, really good relationship with Bo Macri, and I had a great relationship with him, and I say, hey, sir, this is what I want. And I get this, are you sure that's what you want? I said, yeah, I'm sure. I said, now explain it to me. Why do you want this? Because of this, that, and the other. Here's what I think, and here's what I want to do. It's great. Now go talk to the group commander, who was a full bird colonel. I didn't know him from Adam. I had no interaction with him whatsoever. But I'm a lieutenant going up to talk to a colonel going, oh boy, what is this, right? There's a lot of pressure here. Walk in, report in, salute to him, and the first thing he says, Stefan, you have a great career ahead of you. Why are you going to terminate it at being a major? You will never make it past major if you take this assignment. Why do you want to do this? So we sat down and we talked about it. He goes, great, I'll support you. Now go tell the wing commander. The wing commander to a lieutenant on a base is, I don't mean to offend people, but it's right next to God.
Yeah.
As far as your vision, at that your bubble, your universal. I didn't know who he was either. Never met him. Report in. And we go through that same thing. He almost verbatim told him, why are you going to terminate your career? Why are you screwing this up? You have great potential. So
They all thought the same.
Yeah, it's like, oh,
and they're all
man.
trying to discourage
So
you.
what is going on
Yeah.
here? And finally, when we're done, he goes, okay, I'll support you, but I needed to know, because when we go down,
Yeah.
there's a high probability you're going to be the #1 record. And I'm not beating my chest. It's all on paper. It's just paper, right? And he goes, but I have to tell the 3-star now why Lieutenant Clark's going to terminate his career at major and go do this. But they supported me all along the way, which I mean, I couldn't have asked for more. We got the assignment, and we took off to Hurlburt that summer. Cynthia, you were 8 months pregnant. We had to get a waiver to travel,
Yeah.
go through Little Rock, and then we get down to Hurlburt. And like I said, it's a tiny little community. Colonel Charlie Holland was the wing commander at the time. He retired
What
as
year is this?
This is summer of '92, summer
Okay.
'92.
Okay.
So Charlie Holland is the wing commander as a colonel. He later on gets his 4th star and is the commander of U.S. SOCOM. So I worked with men multiple. But we were small enough that every new officer to the wing got a one-on-one interview with the wing commander. That's how small we were. We weren't even the size really of a group when it became. AFSOC is now, I think it's over 20,000 people within the command. I mean,
A little bigger
it's
than
all,
when you were there.
yeah, it's massive. You know, we actually drove right past the base and never saw it. Had to turn around and go back to it. And stuff. But yeah, so there we go.
Yeah. And when you're there, I imagine you're excited. This is what you wanted. Was it everything you wanted it to be? Was it rough at first and you kind of made it into your thing? Can you talk about that experience?
I wouldn't say it was rough. It was all new. It was another grand adventure.
Yeah.
Right, it was all new. It was a grand adventure. We were getting started. We were renting a furnished little townhouse downtown where we were building our first home. Our daughter Shelby was born. We were trying to find a church to belong to. I grew up Catholic. Cynthia grew up Methodist. We stumbled upon and wound up with the Episcopal Church, which is kind of a midsection for that, because we wanted our girls to have some grounding there, so we got involved with the community there.
I grew up Catholic, my wife's Baptist, and we're Baptist now.
See, my dad grew up Baptist, my mom's Catholic, he's Catholic. So, yeah, we know how that works.
Yeah.
But it was a grand adventure, and learning a new aircraft, new weapon system. It's a 13-person crew, so there's a lot of people, officer enlisted. Flying the aircraft wasn't that hard. Managing the mission and the crew and the weapons employments and the target selections and all of that, that was different.
Remind me of the aircraft, because I remember you saying that you saw a picture of all the weaponry.
Yeah.
I don't remember if you said the aircraft or not,
It's-
so for our
Yep.
listeners.
So it's an AC-130 Spectre gunship. So the gunships came on early in Vietnam, and starting with the AC-47s, and then several iterations, and then they wound up with the AC-130, which is a C-130 cargo platform that now has, at the time, dual 20mm cannons up front, Gatling guns up front, a 40mm Bofors cannon right behind the wing line, and then a 105mm howitzer behind it.
Now, at this point, did you call your dad and tell him you got something a little bit faster than the helicopter?
Well, I did, except he argued with me. He goes, well, in flight school you did, because I flew the T-38 as a student. I taught in the T-37, so that was faster. He goes, well, 130, I'm not sure it can outrun a Huey.
Way to go, Dad. As a dad, I get it.
Keep me humble.
That's right.
That's right. But he had been on the ground in Vietnam when the AC-130 gunships were supporting the fire bases and stuff like that. So he understood what it was and what the community was. And within the SOF community, it was a joint community. So you had Army, Navy, and Air Force Special Operations coming together, and he understood the joint environment there. So I think he was pretty excited about it. I don't think he understood what my career path was going to be and whether it was going to amount to anything, but he was happy that we were.
Did you have an understanding of that career path? And did you care? Because you're doing what you wanted to do, and in your mind, this is exciting, it's new. Are you still thinking there's more and I want more?
I was learning the mission
Yeah.
and getting absorbed in that. I was not thinking much past
Yeah.
that at the time. I did have some inkling that, hey, I would love the opportunity to be the operations officer for this kind of unit. I didn't aspire to command. I had a particular vision about command. And I'm like, I don't know if I really want to do that. They attend a lot of meetings, do a lot of paperwork. The director of operations gets to
That's my
conduct
understanding of
operations.
command, yeah.
Gets to do the operations, gets to do the fun stuff, gets to go out on the missions.
Right.
Yeah,
right,
who's
right,
giving
yeah,
up that,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Who's
yeah.
going to give up that? So that's kind of what I was thinking, but at the time, it was so far down there, because lieutenant colonels were old people. I mean, they're just old,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
You have no concept of how fast that timeline has potential to occur. And then we were ginning up to start to deploy, because the unit just come back out of Panama, we were in transition, history was ending, and Bosnia hadn't started yet. And that's what changed everything about a year afterwards, was when Bosnia kicked off. So yeah, I was still trying to figure out how to manage a crew and be productive there at the time.
Yep. And so, starting a family, launching this exciting new adventure, fire hose, learning all the new information. Take us from there into the middle part of that experience. I'm not sure exactly how to do that, but you've got this big trajectory. We have a lot of ground to cover, right? We don't want to get too in the weeds, but for our listeners, that experience is formative for you. This is kind of your first groundbreaking, exciting, everything all in one moment for you in your life.
Yeah. Well, if I take the arc of that and try to boil it down and go, okay, what helped enable that? Because most of that is not about me and what I did. It's about the people you run into and the mentors you run into and the opportunities that they present to you. And did you understand it at the time, or take on the challenge, or did you shy away from it? But early on in our time at Herndon, I ran into some people that were critical to the rest of our career. And one is now retired Chief Master Sergeant Billy Turner. Billy T and I was a young captain. I'd just been on captain actually right after we got there. And he was a young staff sergeant. He's a gunner. Billy T plays out later on in the career when he's my senior enlisted advisor as a squadron commander. He visits me in Iraq as a group commander, and he's my Chief Master Sergeant, Command Chief Master Sergeant for when I was a wing commander. And I think I promoted him through half of his career, got to do the promotions. And then we just inducted him into the Air Commando Hall of Fame this year. And he and Stacy, they're still very, very close friends. And so he's with us, he and Stacy are with us in and out through our entire career, whether in person or on the phone or on the computer or whatever it is. You know, and I'm working his assignments because I think I saw early on, here's a young man who's got tremendous potential and can give back, and that's his bent, because it was never about him. It was always about the airmen, our families, this and the other. As Cynthia would say, he's her favorite airman, because when we do a promotion ceremony, whatever it is, and I play the Air Force song, he's the first one out and the loudest one there. You know, just belting it out. He's really, really a neat guy. You know, and then we ran into Ray Kilgore as a squadron commander, and he took care of me along the way. And you know, whether it's him, Mike Woolley, then back around to General Holland when he was a two-star, I was his executive officer. So these people keep popping in. Art Gistel, Steve Connolly. I keep naming people along the way that we bumped into that took us under their wing and said, hey, did you think about this? Or, hey, here's this job opening up. Would you be interested in that? And I've already confessed, I'm not the rocket scientist. So I remember with Art Gisel, we were up in the Pentagon. I'm a major at the time, and I'm escorting to a meeting. He goes, hey, we're drinking a beer at the Doubletree. And he goes, hey, this job's opening up. What do you think? I don't know. You think it'd be a good job? He goes, yeah, it might be good for you. Well, I was an executive officer to the two-star. You know, yeah, it probably was going to turn out good. So that's what that underlines the entire career. Yeah. So when we were sitting there and you know, Bosnia kicks off, we deploy the squadron to southern Italy, down to Brindisi, Italy, and we're flying missions into Bosnia, fire support missions, and we had to figure out, because the gunship at the time either flew between 3,000 and 6,000 feet above ground level, AGL. Well, the threats inside of Bosnia, which former Yugoslavia had all the Soviet threat system, we had to figure out how to employ the platform from 18,000 feet. And there's a lot of holes in that aircraft, and it's 30, 40 degrees below zero in the back, and you have to modify the heat, this whole bunch of other stuff that we're trying to figure out. So, you know, you get involved in that, and then from there, we wound up getting redeployed from Bosnia down to Kenya and then Mogadishu for what people popularly know as Black Hawk Down. So you get to started getting to touch a little bit of history and get involved, and that goes on your records and the missions and the hours and all that other stuff, which then starts to create some momentum.
And that combined, your experiences combined with the personal connections that you're making and the suggestions that they're making are having an impact on the arc of your career. Time-wise, we're mid-90s,
Mid-90s.
okay? What's the next step in your career?
Yeah, so as an aviator, so you start as an officer in aviation, you start to measure out where you are tactically within the aircraft and your qualifications, and then where you are in the promotion cycles, where those are marrying up, and what's required to get to that next promotion. And it's not careerism. I think that's an overused pejorative. If you're not smart enough to do the things that are required to get promoted, you don't deserve to get promoted, because you don't understand. Because if you're going to get promoted, you're going to have to take care of the people down here in order to help them get promoted later on. You got to know what that is. You have to take an interest in your career. If you think you're going to be idly by and somebody's going to do that for you, it's just not going to happen. So I was a little bit behind in the upgrades because I had been a flight instructor coming to 130s. There were other guys who went straight to 130s and had a lot more 130 time than I did. So they keep getting pushed ahead for the upgrades because they have more 130 time and stuff like that. And so I was running a little bit behind, I thought. So I was getting a little anxious, and this is where Ray Kilgore comes into play. You know, hey, you know, I'm an aircraft commander. I'm sitting in the left seat. My matrix board is coming up. If I'm not at least an instructor, if not an evaluator by that time, I'm not making major. It's a pretty clean kill at the board, because I'm not showing the tactical progression and the professionalism within my chosen career field. So Ray took it upon himself. He goes, hey, I got you here. We're going to get your instructor upgrade done, and then we're going to accelerate your evaluator upgrade.
Yeah. Because it doesn't seem to me, looking at it from the outside, that it was any fault of your own. It was just you were behind on the clock on 130, and maybe some other folks recognize that, hey, here's this talented guy who needs a little bit of a push.
Well, there was that, and this is the only gunship squadron in the Air Force. There's no lateral moving into other units and stuff like that, or very little of it. And when we got there, Bernie Franks was the chief pilot, and he was a Vietnam era guy as a lieutenant colonel. There were more lieutenant colonels than anybody else, and we used to joke, you know, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a lieutenant colonal, right? You know, and the only way you're going to upgrade is if one dies or retires, and they're not retiring anytime soon. So yeah, there was a kind of there were very few places to fit in. So yeah, I think Ray looked at it and thought to himself, hey, here's a guy who's got some potential and all that. I'm not going to be the one who holds him back if I have the opportunity to do it. And it wasn't that I wasn't capable.
Yeah.
I still had to go through the same thing everybody else did on the upgrades and stuff.
I think there's another piece to this, and I wonder what your wife thinks about this. I think you are a quietly competitive person. Whether it's with your dad, whether it's with the people that you're working with, I think there's this little piece of you that wants to be better, wants to do more.
I just think he's very confident.
Yeah.
Very confident person.
A confident person. I think that's a part of this, that you wanted more out of it. You're not satisfied.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I wanted to succeed, not for the merit badge. I wanted to succeed because I wanted to still be of value. And I still wanted to participate, and I still wanted to make a difference. And the only way to continue to do that is to continue to progress. But I'm a naturally inquisitive person. There's very few things that don't interest me. Cynthia goes, Ben, your mind is going everywhere. I said, yeah, I can't slow it down. I don't know what it, I just enjoy it. But, you know, and that goes back to my parents and my grandparents. My German grandfather was a lawyer, but during World War II, so he was in Germany, so he was in the German army during World War II. He's a medical doctor, you know, and he has his doctorate in philosophy. We would sit around the dinner table, and he would take you on a tour de force of current events around the world every evening. You know, he's like, so there was always something. So I think I got a lot of that. And my parents are competitive. I mean, they're not competitive in the, hey, I need to beat you, but competitive in, I want to keep participating. And Cynthia's parents were the same way in their communities. They wanted to be pillars of their community, meaning they wanted to participate and make their communities better. And I hope that's, you know, in that regard, that's what I had.
So you were a lieutenant when you went into the 130. Where are you at now in the mid-90s? What's your rank?
So I'm a captain.
Okay.
The promotions for a captain so the military is shrinking, so the promotion board spread out. So normally it was 2 years as a second lieutenant, 2 years as a first lieutenant, 4 years as a captain. I spent 6 years as a captain, just for the lack of promotion board. In fact, my uncle thought my career was over. He goes, "You've just been a captain forever. You're not going anywhere." Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
You're probably right. I don't know.
Well, but he was not right. He was very wrong. It went on from there.
Yeah. So
How did it go on from there? You're 6 years, and then
yeah.
what?
So Ray Cooler again. So I needed a staff assignment at the time, and I needed to go to school. So one, I needed to make major. When you make major, you either get selected to go to school or you don't. That's another cut. So making major is one thing. Getting selected to go in residence school, so intermediate service school, so Air Command and Staff College. That's another. You have to get selected on the list, and then you get matched or picked up off the list. And not everybody on the list actually got to go at the time. So those two things, and then you need to have a staff assignment as an officer. And that's what was crushing down on me at the time, was trying to get those lined up. So an assignment came available up at the AFSOC, our Major Command headquarters, which happened to be on the same installation, which was very lucky. So he said he'd support me for that, and so I got that assignment. So then I left the operations department and went up to the staff.
What do you think about leaving the operations side of that? Because that early on, you're thinking, this is where I want to be. I want to be where the action's at, and I look at the other side as pushing a lot of paper. I don't want to be.
Yeah, well, there's that. That's the reality
Are
of
you
it.
still thinking?
Well, at that time, I'm thinking, okay, I have to go do this in order to get back to this. Because if I want to be the ops officer, I had to make lieutenant colonel to come back to be the ops officer. And the only way to make lieutenant colonel was, 1, make major, 2, go to school, and 3, to get that staff tour.
It's a necessary.
3 things had to occur with that. So I got the staff assignment and was fortunate in what was going on within that particular requirements assignment when the military, or the Federal Aviation, was restructuring the airspace and bringing on all the digital GPS and everything else, and all that restructure. So that meant we had to reconfigure all of the aircraft. And that program, just for our small command, was a couple $2 billion. It was the largest requirements program in the command, and as the brand new guy on staff, it landed on my desk. Fortune, you know, it just got fortunate. I just happened to be there, so I got to integrate and do all. And then that required me.
Let me stop you real quick and ask you about technology. Is, in your estimation, is the Air Force the most technologically driven branch of the armed forces? Looking from the outside, it seems that that's the case.
Yeah,
And we're talking about this new tech and having to integrate it.
I think so. I think there could be an argument made now with Space Force. But Space Force is aligned with the Air Force like the Marine Corps is with the Navy. So you're talking the same DNA, but I would say, so we're very reliant on it, where the other services are leverage it tremendously, but they're not heavily reliant on it. We're heavily reliant on it.
And so that's part of your job now, is integrating this new technology. With the goal, though, of getting back.
Yes.
And so you're doing these steps that you need to get the promotion and to get back, and that works out for you.
It does, because I'm very fortunate to work, I think I mentioned him earlier, Art Gistel was the colonel I worked for. And we were up in the Pentagon briefing the Air Force Requirements Oversight Council, and I was the designated chair kicker is what I called it. I sat behind him, he sat at the table, he'd nod off, I kicked the back of his chair to wake him up, right? So, and I told you earlier, we were a small command, so as a captain, I had more authority than lieutenant colonels in the rest of the Air Force. More responsibilities and more authority because we were so small. So going in to talk to the colonel or to the two-star, to that command was no big deal to have a captain go talk to the two-star. And again,
It puts you in
it goes
contact
back to
with
that
them.
original assignment of taking that gunship. If I had gotten the A-10 that I really, really wanted and gone to Air Combat Command, such a much larger enterprise and much more structured,
Greater hierarchy.
I never would have had that access and that freedom of action in order to do the things I want to do. But it was with Art when we were up in Washington, when he asked me to say, hey, there's this job coming up and Mike Vaughn's leaving this job. Do you think you'd be interested? Well, that was the exec to the one-star at the time, Mike Woolley. So I said, yeah. He goes, well, I'll talk to Steve Connolly, who was the director of operations, another colonel. And normally that's a two-star position. At the time, it was a colonel position for us. Because if he'll support you, because he had to give up the rated billet, which was a whole nother manpower structure thing. And the billet for the exec was non-rated, so he had to give up a rated position to go up there. So Steve Connolly, who we happened to go to church with as well, and he goes, yeah, if you can get the job, I'll support you, but you got to get the job. So so we came back on Friday. Steve said yes on Monday. I had the interview on Thursday and was hired on Friday. And changed the trajectory completely. Because, somebody say, oh yeah, you got every exec. What if you want to learn how to make Eisenhower? Very quote from him is, if you want to learn how to make great decisions, you have to get next to the people who actually have to make those kinds of decisions and learn how they think about it. They're just normal people, but they're faced with some extraordinary things, and you get to learn. You could be the fly in the room. That's the payback for the drudgery of being the executive officer. You get to be in the room, you get to listen to the conversations, and then at the end of the day, when the doors close and everything quiets down, you get to sit down with your principal and go, okay, help me understand this, and they take the time to do that. And that's...
So it was an education, it was a learning process for you.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it, the learning? Or in your head, are you still thinking, I mean, has something changed for you? You still want to get back to operations and do that thing, or is it something different now?
No, I definitely still want to
Your
get
goals
back to
and ambitions.
operations, but I was fascinated.
Yeah.
I was fascinated by the conversations that were going on, and Mike Woolley was very generous.
It's not just paperwork, it's not just pushing paper.
No,
Yeah.
it's really learning and getting access to. So at the time, one of the big questions from my peers was, so in the Air Force you have to go through squadron officer school, which charm school, selective beating, whatever you want to call it. You go up to Maxwell and you spend your 6-7 weeks up there learning how to brief your 3 points and this, that, and the other, kind of staff officer school, if you will. But they always said, why is that so important? If you're a distinguished graduate out of SOS, it seems to put you on a different trajectory, right? So I got to walk into General Holland as a two-star because after Woolley left, I slid up and became the two-stars exec and stuff. So I sat down with him and I said, hey, sir, do you mind me asking you, why is this so important? And he's a good old boy from West Virginia, big, tall, 6'3", 6'4" gentleman. Stephen Agassi, let me tell you. Oh man, here it comes, right? But he explained it out as to why. He goes, look, anytime we invest significant amount of resources in something, the senior leadership thinks it's important. Second, when you're given the opportunity, did you recognize it and take advantage of that opportunity to learn something? And third, if you did, you did something more than the rest of your peers did, and we like people who think like us, and you got it early in your career. You understood the importance of this. So what was on my record at the time is I'd been a distinguished graduate out of flight school. I was a distinguished graduate out of a squadron officer school. I'd been selected as the outstanding second lieutenant, I think, in flight school, and class contributor, and same in SOS or whatever. So those were things that were kind of in my records as well. So, so we're talking there. So that's when he said that about SOS, I started to put it together, going, oh, this is different.
He's tracking all these.
Yeah, and then with Joe Woolley, he would do all the rack and stacks for the promotion. We do something called a promotion recommendation form. So you have your individual annual reports, and then you do a promotion recommendation form going into a board. And he would do that rack and stack for the command and see who they would assign a definitely promote rating to, or a promote rating to, or do not promote rating to. As the exec, I had to organize all the files for him. So I took the time to sequester myself in a room, go through all these files, and kind of do my own
Sure.
rack and stack and see. And then I'd mix them all up and throw it back in and give it to him. And then I'd compare what his answers were versus my answers. It's like, okay, I'm starting to understand the code.
Were they wildly different, or were you on target?
We matched about the 95, 98 percentile
Yeah.
because there's certain things that just,
Stood
so
out.
they score them.
Yeah.
Well, you start to figure out what scores higher than the other things and stuff like that. You go, okay. Here's the things. And I was able to use that time later on to mentor my folks in the squadron as to how to take care of themselves and what their records look like, what their options are, or hey, how many doors are already closed to you
Yeah.
because of things you didn't take advantage of.
Where are you at this point? Where are you living? Where's your family?
We're still in the same house. So we were there for 7 years the first time around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we finished up our tour there, and
This is late '90s.
this was 99, right? Because we went up to Newport, Rhode Island, what was selected for the Naval War College for my intermediate service school. So I went to a joint school,
Okay.
which was pretty cool because my dad went there as an Army officer. So I was in second grade then at the time, and my daughter was in second grade.
Yeah. You didn't run into John Hattendorf up there when you were up there. He's a professor of history, also has a career in the Navy, but
No, I
forgot the name.
I had Dr. Michael Handel was one of my big professors. He taught Clausewitz. He's since passed away from cancer. And then Jim Gibling was the other one that had a major impact on me.
Okay. That's 1999. You're at the Naval War College, and gosh, I mean, what are you thinking about your career at this point? What are your goals, ambitions? I mean, what's going through your head?
Well, the confluence that occurred at the time was I did get picked up for lieutenant colonel 2 years early. So that changed the trajectory pretty rapidly at that point.
After being stalled at captain, you're kind of now
Yeah.
fast tracked.
Yeah, it really changed the calculations and made it, that's when Cynthia started telling us, okay, we're gonna have to make some decisions here along the way. And we kind of put those markers down, and I don't know that we stuck to all of them. But, because we wanted our girls to be stable in high school. They went up with 3 apiece, so that didn't work out too well. Some other things happened, but we did decide we wanted to leave the service on our own terms. When it became a job, it was time to go. When we didn't think we were making a difference, it was time to go. And I told us that my one last criteria was I wanted to leave on our own terms and not have the Chief of Staff of the Air Force ask me to leave. Say, hey, Seven, it's time for you to go. You need time to make way. I didn't want to have that conversation. We wanted
This
to
is
call it.
about 14 years in?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what happens?
Well, we take an assignment to the Pentagon, because that was the other thing. So, I left staff, got to school, now to get the senior assignment to the Pentagon, so that I would be competitive for coming back to squadron command. And the 2-year early promotion told me I'll at least be in the conversation. I'll be on the board somewhere. Where on the board, I don't know, but I'll be on the board. Which, you can get invited to the dance, somebody else has got to ask you onto the dance floor, right? That's out of your control. So we take the assignment to the Pentagon, and we go down. Scott Erickson joins us, and he was up there with us, and then we get assigned to the same office. And it is in a special programs office within the ops director within the Air Force. So I'm behind 2 vaulted doors and a special access program. Scott and I were there to run that, which, again, fortuitously, it's every time I look back, I go, man, you couldn't have gotten any luckier. I mean, If I'd gotten what I wanted, I would have screwed it all up, let's put it that way.
This is around 2000 that you're.
This is
in the
around
Pentagon?
2000, so right before 9/11.
I was gonna say,
we
that is
landed.
an interesting time. to be at the
It becomes
Pentagon.
very interesting. What that job allowed me to do was, from the D-ring, is Scott and I, because of the Special Access Program was an operational program, if we needed Chief of Staff of the Air Force or Secretary of the Air Force approval, we could make our way from our office to the Secretary of the Air Force inside of 30 minutes along that briefing chain, and which I don't know too many people who had that kind of access to do. That's where I learned the second time that the assistants, or at the time, but now the administrative assistants, are the most important people you will ever have to make sure like you, and you take care of them, right? So Scott and I, we go down, we're having to brief, it was the Secretary of Air Force, and we walk in and say, hey man, we need to see the Secretary, this, that, there, we've got something, that's how we've gone through this chain. And she goes, oh no, he's busy. I said, we need 3 minutes, 3 minutes. And she just looks at us like one. So I tell you what, promise. If you let us in, I will hack my watch. If we're not out in 3 minutes or less, you never have to let us in again. Okay, hot shot.
Yeah.
Okay, so Scott, we go in, we do our thing, we come out, hack the watch. 2 minutes, 35 seconds. She goes, I'll see you next time.
And what's interesting to the viewers is, you know, he's talking about the importance of these administrative assistants. A lot of their importance is they're long-standing. They're there, people come and go, but they're there. He just went to visit the Air Force ROTC, where the administrative assistant who was there during his time here at UT is still there. So, just for our viewers at home, that's
Yeah.
that's
Yep.
part of his story.
Frankie Gorman, she took care of me as well, but she also kicked me in the backside a couple of times.
So, can we talk a little bit about 9/11?
Sure.
I remember where I was. I remember what I was doing. Were you in the Pentagon building?
I was in the building. I was fortunate enough at the time to be on the complete opposite side of the building. But had the trade towers not gone down first, I would have been right where the airplane came in. Because we were scheduled for a meeting down at ASD Salt Lake at the time to go down. But when I came in that morning, I'm walking in, Fred Bernard, who was a civilian that worked with us, for whatever reason, we never had the TV on in there. TV was on that morning. And walk in, and we see the tape of the first airplane going into the tower. Okay, that's really, really strange. Second one goes and go, okay, that's not an accident.
You're in the Pentagon, and you're watching on television events that are happening.
Correct.
This is extraordinary. Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking at it, we go, okay, this is not an accident.
Yeah.
This is deliberate. Pick up the phone, call the guys in, so and go, hey, I assume we're not meeting. They go, nope, we're getting really busy. And they go, yep, got it. So I looked at Scott and Fred and said, okay, let's start packing up. Because part of what we did was going to play out. Or we thought would have a high degree of probability to play, and we had our flyaway kits and stuff like that. And then as we're doing all that, I just hear what sounded like a Volkswagen backfiring. Because like I said, we're on the opposite side of the building, and it's a massive building. So, and it's all concrete and this, and then you see, what the heck? What's that? And then the phone rings, and I get this, hey, did you hear the Pentagon got struck by an airplane? She's on the phone. The alarms start to go off, then I go, yep, and we'll be evacuating as soon as I can get off the phone.
Yeah.
She still gives me grief for that one.
You didn't say it like that.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a little different. Yeah. So, I imagine things escalated. I imagine you're very busy at that point. But before all of that, what about your family? Are you checking on them? Just so busy immediately.
No, we were busy immediately.
Yeah.
And I hate to maybe say it that way, but
Yeah. Sure.
Cynthia, has spent a career, and she understands, how things work. When we were in the squadron together, when things kicked off in Bosnia, and for the next 4 years, I was gone 9 months out of every year. I'd go 3 months home a month, go 3 months home a month, go 3 months home a month. So she and the girls, because our second daughter was born during that time frame as well, and they became very independent and very capable, and had their support group. The families had their grouping and took care of each other. And the pace was such that we never knew when we were coming home. They'd get a call and say, hey, they're coming home. This is before internet, so if a letter caught up to you, that was a good deployment, that actually the letter showed up if it caught up to you. And so, but I remember this, about 2.5 years into that deployment cycle, I come home and I get she looks at me and she goes, and that's when I know I'm in trouble. I get the, and she goes, it might be better if you just don't come home till you're done. Because the family gets their routine together, right? They get their thing. And then you come home from it, screw it all up, and then you unass, right? You're gone. She's got to put it all back together again. About the fourth or fifth time, it gets harder and harder and harder.
Yeah.
And then your kids are growing up, and this is the one with Shelby. So I came home off of one deployment, and it was before Cynthia was born, and sit down and there's this little girl looking at me, and you can just touch. She's looking at me, looking at her mom, looking at me, looking at her mom, and kind of going, who is this?
Yeah.
I couldn't tuck her in to bed for 3 or 4 days. And so, but
Part of the hardships and part of the sacrifices that go along with service that a lot of people don't focus on, maybe more focus needs to be on that. But you surmounted it all as a family. And when 9/11 happened, your wife and your kids are able to process all of this to a certain degree. I mean, as much as any of us can process something like that.
I get your story about going in the next day to the burning building.
yeah, so I was already comfortable that they knew how to take care of themselves for whatever the situation was going to be, because nobody knew at the time what else was
No.
happening, right?
Yeah.
You had the crash in Pennsylvania that was
Yeah,
slated
know what was next. Sure.
for the White House or the Capitol. Don't know really which and stuff like that. But it's kind of we had to get our stuff together, and then we had to figure out how to get out of the building and how to get to where we were going. And it took me 5 hours to get home, and we live 15 miles from the Pentagon. It took me 5 hours to get there. Scott actually, we had to find our way down south to get to Scott's car, and then he drove me there and stuff like that. What struck me was the next morning. Well, one, we were then instructed because we were coming in to work in our blues, our service dress, formal suits, military suits, if you will. We were said, hey, come into your battle dress uniforms. So that changed mentally, shifted everybody over. But at the time I was commuting on the bus, so I took the bus in, and they let us off over in Crystal City instead of at the bus terminal by the Pentagon, because the building was still burning. The roof is still on fire, so they let us off in that, and it is a crystal clear September morning. And I would swear there wasn't a cloud or a bird in the sky, I don't think. Nothing was flying. I'm sure there was, but it did seem like it, right? And then I walk through the tunnel to get over to the parking lot, and I remember I just stopped there and looked. There's a line coming out of the Pentagon. So there's a line trying to get into the Pentagon, and the building's burning. And there's a line of people trying to get into a burning building. I was like, this is the damnedest thing I've ever seen. This is, and then I go join the line. We go in, and then you make your way through, and the fire hoses are out, half the windows are blown out. The center courtyard is a morgue, and stuff like that. It is still, but I think it's where the country said, we're coming to work, and we're going to get after this. There wasn't much we could do at the time because we're still trying to figure it out. But yeah, everybody came in and did what they needed to do.
An extraordinary time to be at the Pentagon. Historically unprecedented time to be at the Pentagon. Did that renew your sense of purpose? Did that renew your drive to be on the world stage? Did that renew in you a desire to help and to serve?
I don't.
Or did it just scare the bejesus out of you and make you want to retire and go home to Virginia and live a quiet life?
No, it didn't do that.
Okay.
I was trying to think through if I would say renew. I think
right, yeah.
I think it accelerated.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
just emphasized
Yeah.
hey, here's all of this training and experience from Bosnia to Somalia to a couple of other places. This and the operational experience. SOCOM Special Operation is growing. There's added capabilities in here. So immediately my brain starts spinning and says, okay, what's the force getting ready to do? How do I help them posture? And so, because I know they're getting active. I just intuitively know they're going to do their thing. So how do we anticipate this in the building, and how do I help my leadership understand how to help them and what the options are available to the decision makers here from the perspective and the access that I have. And we weren't the biggest kids on the block, so it was just our area of influence within the Air Force, but was not unimportant because the Air Force, nobody walks to a war, right? Everybody's jumping on an airlift, on a sea lift, and they're going in this. And I knew that the soft community had to go fast, so that meant air. And some of the organizations that had to move, we don't recognize, we don't talk about. And there's different ways of message trafficking to move them, so I knew that was going to cause confusion when certain things were being directed and nobody knew why. And the last thing a general officer wants is to be told to do something and not know why. So I had to start figuring out, how do I work in between the seams and not violate the security and the classifications and this, that, and the other, and not like so we worked a bit of that. Most of it was successful. One time, tremendously not successful. Actually twice, because you can do all the quiet movements you want, but your ammo's still got to get there. And that's what tipped it one time was, hey, all this ammo, where's it going? Who's it supporting? Okay, let me put that one back in the box here and try to limit that and stuff like that. And then another time we did brief in a senior flag officer, and I hate to say it, then he immediately turned around and started telling everybody. So we had to work back channel to get them shut down.
So you're thinking administratively. It's interesting to hear you talk about that post 9/11 moment. It almost seems like the old you would have said, let's get into that 130 and let's go do something.
Oh, I would have loved to have done that, but I think I was more where I was, because there are a lot of younger folks in the operational side that were going. It's not that I wouldn't have loved to have done that, but with what I understood at the time and where I could help them, which is when I think you're on staff, it's not necessarily penance, that's your time to actually give back and help and make things better, smarter, faster, smoother for the folks when their time is up to be on the line, but be on the pointy end and stuff like that. And I think we did some pretty good work in being able to smooth out as much as possible those operations as fast as we could, knowing that you weren't going to get to everything.
Yeah.
They were still going to have to figure something out. Things were still going to break. All this was going to happen, but that friction of war, could we alleviate some of that and posture capabilities in front of them, knowing intuitively what they were going to need and getting out ahead of them, because they're heads down busy. Even the staffs down at that level are busy doing all kinds of things. They're depending upon us to have that strategic view and go, okay, we're here on the 3-meter target, we need you out there on the 30-meter target, so that when we get there, we can handle it, right? Because there are certain things, if those roadblocks aren't moved out of the way, we're going to go all stop here. We can't crush through this. And I think that was the perspective we kind of took.
And you're a lieutenant colonel?
So Lieutenant Colonel, yeah.
And there's the post 9/11 ramp up, and you're figuring out how to help the Air Force as best you can in this situation and meet the needs of the day. and you're working on that front. The activities that you're engaged in after 9/11, does that play a role in how your career goes, where you see yourself, your family, and what they want? Can you talk a little bit about that in between 9/11 and you being a lieutenant colonel in
Yeah.
the next step in your career?
We, I don't think at the time we were looking
Yeah,
too
I don't
far
think anybody was.
past that. That when the Pentagon spins up on something like that,
Yeah.
one like says, I don't want to say it's unprecedented,
Yeah,
but the speed at the time, the rapid onset is what got it, and people had to figure, okay, how do we make this transition, get onto that wartime footing? So a lot of internal processes and structures changed, so we were busy doing that. We were on shift down in the Air Force Operations Group for months, to where we were just going back and forth. So I was either home sleeping or in the Pentagon, or commuting in between and doing night shifts and stuff like that. And that lasted for at least, 6-7 months, where we were just heads down on that, doing that. And then the assignment came down where I got selected to go be the ops officer for a combat unit. So, which was a great relief. I was like, okay, finally.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
That was, here we go.
So you are getting back into
That
operations.
we shift,
Yeah.
we start to swing back that direction. And I'm going to a new unit now, to the 4th Special Operations Squadron. So they'd stood up a 2nd Gunship Squadron in the 99 time frame. Or so 90, I guess it was actually 97 it started to stand up, and then it was fully operational in 99. And the unit was just coming back from, let's see, they'd been in Bosnia, so far in Yugoslavia, and then they'd gone up to Afghanistan, and they'd just come back from there. And so when I got to the unit and was getting trained up, the entire 4th SOS was flowing back to reset for whatever the next wave was going to be, which wound up being Iraq.
And it's interesting you said, thank God you got back into operations, because at that moment, you're a really good administrator. At that moment, you're helping the Air Force move in different directions.
You'd have to ask my boss whether I was really good at it or not.
Well, you wouldn't be there. You wouldn't have been there, and you wouldn't have been asked
Yeah.
to do the sorts of things that you did during that time if you weren't. If you sucked and you were terrible, somebody would have moved your butt out. So you were, and you could have at that moment done it. Your career could have, and your life could have gone a different way, and it didn't. It went back to operations, which is what you wanted, and you said.
Yeah, I mean, my heart, my DNA, my brain is in operations, and it's what I love doing. I actually didn't care for staff work that much, but I knew it was necessary.
Can I tell you something I don't tell a lot of people that I interview, but I always want to after the fact? I sleep better at night knowing that there's people out there like you, who are not like me. I'm hot-tempered. I fly off the handle, quick to argue, don't have a cool head as much as I probably should. There are people in our military, and I think our viewers need to appreciate this, who are very pleasant to speak to, such as yourself, who aren't angry, who don't want to fight all the time, but they have a fire in their belly. It's people like you that make me sleep better, knowing that you're out there doing the sorts of things that you're doing.
I appreciate that. And Cynthia might disagree with you. A little
That is
bit.
true. I've only known this man for a few hours. But you want to get back into operations
Yeah.
at this moment. You have this burning desire to get back into operations, and you say thank God, and you get back
Yeah.
into the fight.
Yeah, yes. What you realize when you get older and you look back, you go, okay, life goes by really, really fast. You know, so those opportunities are fleeting,
For sure.
and your opportunity to get out there. And I desperately wanted to get back into the operations, because I believed at the time that's what I was really good at, right? So I was very thankful to get the assignment. We went back to Hurlburt. It was a much bigger place at the time. There were a lot more people there. Went to a unit that I didn't know. A couple of people I knew in the unit, but I didn't know the unit itself. So we got checked out in a much more modern aircraft version of the gunship.
How close to 9/11 was this that you got back into operations? 2000 what?
So we 2002. Yeah, we got the assignment. We got to Hurlburt in April or May of 2002. Because then I had, like I said, I had to get checked out, and I was sitting in the seat as the DO of the squadron simultaneously, and we were preparing to go to Iraq. So I got my butt handed to me to try to do all that, but it was fun. I mean, we learned a lot. Got to meet some great people.
What was the aircraft?
So it was the AC-130U Spooky gunship. So yeah, there was the Spectre, then the Spooky, and these are historic names because there's other versions of them earlier. They resurrected the Spooky with the U model, so it had upgraded engines. It had a 30mm cannon up front instead of the dual 20s. The dual 20s had come off, so they put the 30 up front. You had the 40, the 105. Now the new J's have missiles on them and all kinds of stuff. But it had a lot of extra avionics, a lot of more bandwidth coming into the aircraft. When I first started flying, if you didn't take off with your mission, you weren't getting more guidance once you were airborne. Now the internet's in the aircraft and stuff. The communications, the sensor flows, and all that. It's impressive. It's impressive what it can do. But yeah, now we had to get the squadron figured out, because Iraq was going to be a different environment than Afghanistan from a threat perspective, right? And so we had to get that figured out. We had some reorganization to do in the squadron, and we didn't know what we were going to face. It was, when I took a look at it, Seth Junkins was the squadron commander. He and I had worked together in our previous squadron, the 16th Flying Inspector gunships and stuff like that. He was the commander. We had to figure that out, and what the decision that came down as we got closer to the war was half the squadron was going to Jordan, the other half was going to Romania to come down on the northern side of Iraq, and I was going to take the other half into Jordan and come in the western half of Iraq supporting the SOF forces. So we had to figure out how to split the squadron, how to resource the squadron, get the right crews there, and essentially empty it out and leave a small little cadre behind. And anticipating this is not going to be a short duration, how do we sustain the training pipeline to keep feeding? Who's going to come in and replace crews as they go home to rest and reset, come back?
Yeah.
How are we going to do that?
And our listeners might remember that this is at the moment where we still think Iraq might have weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. We don't know where this war is going to end up, and everybody's kind of thinking what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. We've got a lot of ground to cover in a short amount of time, and so in my head I'm just trying to think the best way to do this. You have these operational experiences. You're back doing what you love, and the whole reason for doing the administrative side of it was to get back to the operations side of it. Are you thinking that at that point, I imagine you're not thinking about your career. I imagine you're not thinking about what comes next. You're busy doing what you're doing, and what is the thing that moves you to the next stage in your career? What is it?
So in the middle of that, I get selected to take over the squadron, to become the commander. Seth is going to go off to Air War College, I want to take over command. And at that point in time, I was like, I'm course complete. Just leave me here.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Right? This is.
You're where you want to be.
Yeah.
I'm where I wanted to be. We've achieved more than, because I had gotten, since we split the squadron, we both had to share squadron commander responsibilities back and forth. So the administrator, I'm taking care of people's careers. You still had people PCSing, you still have people going to school, you still have promotions going on and all that other stuff, which meant all the administrative record keeping and everything else still had to occur in the background. So we're splitting those responsibilities, and then I get the call say, hey, you're going to be the next squadron commander, and we get to figure that out. And I thought, okay, wow, I wonder how long I can hang on in this job and do this for the rest of my life, because that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I was
What year was
ecstatic.
this? When was this?
So this was '04.
Okay. And what's the promotion?
So I was still lieutenant colonel,
Yeah.
but while I was the squadron commander, I got promoted early to colonel.
Okay.
So now I'm 3 years below the zone in total. And let me backtrack just a second, because I had a very interesting conversation with one of my young execs who just retired. We just retired him as a colonel. And he's an A&M grad though, so a little shaky there. But but when we were doing, so I took upon myself to do a 30-minute mentoring session with every one of my officers in the squadron. We had 120 of them. And we were going to do this every year, so we set up that routine. And I had a sheet I had them fill out questionnaire because I wanted to think about it in advance. But anyway, so part of those discussions was how fast this can occur. So they're sitting in front of me as a captain, you know, and I could say, because of the early promotion, you know, 3 years ago I was in your seat and now I'm the squadron commander. It could happen this fast. You think you got a long time. You may not. To do that, and man, the clue lights started coming on and stuff like that, and it was pretty fascinating, you know. And they had very highly successful careers, and some of them are still going. When we look back, when Billy T and I look back at my chief, we said, okay, where's everybody from our time in the squadron? It was magnificent what they had achieved. We had, I think we were at 15 chief master sergeants. Half of them have been command chief master sergeants. We had 14 or 15 squadron commanders. We had 7 or 8 group commanders. We were on 3 or 4 wing commanders, all of which made general officer. And I look back and go, wow. Wow, were we lucky in command or not to have that as the talent pool that you got the honor to lead in combat? And yeah, it was absolutely spectacular. So yeah, I thought we were good. I was like,
You're colonel,
yeah. Well, they promoted me to colonel and go, okay,
you're helping
shoot.
people achieve their dreams.
Well, what I was afraid of, so when the wing commander called me up and said, hey, here's your PRF, it's a definitely promote to colonel early. I kind of looked at it, and I kid you not, I said, please tear that up. Because that means I'm coming out of command. I will give this up to stay at a second year. Just tear it. And he just looked at me and said, it's not how it works. Okay, it's not how it works. So the squadron was the most deployed squadron in the Air Force for 2 years, 2 out of the 3 years running. We were the outstanding squadron of the command 2 out of the 3 years we were there, which just meant that people were just working their butts off. It had nothing to do with Seth and I. It was the team that we had doing great things. So I mean, it was a phenomenal opportunity. But yet, when they pulled us out of command, we were actually at a senior NCO Academy graduation. Get the call. O.G. Manning was the wing commander, and he said, "Hey, Stefan, you know, I know your promotion came late, so the school board had already met, and all the assignments were taken, but there are a couple of fallout slots. You're going to Harvard." That was a fallout slot?
Where did Harvard come from? I forgot that was in your resume.
So it was a defense fellowship at the Weatherhead Center for International Affairs.
Yeah.
I had no clue.
Yeah.
You know, and I looked at Cynthia, I'm on the phone, I said, hey, we're going to Harvard. She just looks at me and goes, I never imagined you're a Harvard kind of guy. It's like,
It was April Fool's Day.
yeah, everyone's like, yeah, neither did I. And they're in for a surprise when we get there. Boy. So we did the change grant, and it was funny. So, you know, the squadron, they bought me a a replica of Kennedy's pipe to
Yeah.
take with me to Harvard.
Yeah, yeah. And how long were you at Harvard?
We were there for a year.
Okay.
We did a year at the Weatherhead Center, which, as a fellow, you got access to all the universities in the Boston area.
Yeah.
And you could audit whatever you wanted.
To do what, though? What the hell are you doing at Harvard?
Having fun. Just absolutely having. I told Cynthia, I got one morning, I goes, you know, the hardest thing in my day is figuring out what not to do.
Yeah.
I just scratched stuff off the list, because I was a kid in the candy store.
Yeah.
You know, we were down at the Kennedy School. We were at Center for International Affairs. I audited a course over at MIT. I helped with a course over at Tufts. We went over to Boston College. I mean, it was just, you get to sit there at the Harvard Forum or in the Belfer Center. So when somebody's going to present at the Harvard Forum, they normally go to the Belfer Center for a lunchtime in the library. And so this was, I got to know the administrative assistant there, and I got on their mailing list. I wasn't at the Belfer Center, but I got on the mailing list. So I always got a seat there at the table. And so anybody who was coming to the forum would go there first, and you had this intimate 10-person conversation.
Wow.
It was incredible.
What year was this? 2010?
No, this was 05.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in fact, they frocked me to colonel. I got to wear the rank before I actually got promoted.
Okay.
Because it was a senior fellowship, so I had to fit in with all these people.
Yeah.
So a lieutenant colonel was not going to do,
Yeah.
according to them. So yeah, we got to go do that. We came out of there after that year, and that's when I went to Iraq. I went back to Iraq to take my group level command. So I took command of all the special operations air, joint air in Iraq and Afghanistan and HOA.
I just think that's extraordinary. Operations, Harvard.
Back to operations. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a weird year.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah, and then I packed up and went for a full year up to Balad and Bagram. So Balad, Iraq, and Bagram, Afghanistan, back and forth between the two, which I think when we talked about earlier about going back and forth, that was actually the fastest deployment I had, because it wasn't interrupted in all that mental churn. You know, it was get on the ground, focus, boom, here you go. And I came back, and I guess every time I started talking about my tour there, I was grinning from ear to ear, and Cynthia looked at me and goes, why don't you just go back? I would if they let me. They're not going to let me.
Yeah.
It was, and I hate to say war is fun, but the challenge, the pace, and getting to do some of the things that needed to be done and all that, it was an exceptional learning experience for me.
Yeah.
You know, my learning curve throughout my career has been always very, very steep. So I'm very fortunate with that. And then came out of there, and we went to Washington as they were standing up the National Counterterrorism Center. So I was the SOCOM liaison to the NCTC, and got to take a look inside of that.
Back at the Pentagon?
No, it was out by Tyson's Corner in
Okay.
LX1.
Okay.
So what now is ODNI, Office of Director of National Intelligence, and the NCTC is part of that. Is part of some of the restructure of the intelligence community,
Yeah.
which always causes concern. I think a lot of the IC really was actively trying to kill the NCTC before it gets started, but it hung on. And then they created the Office of Director of National Intelligence. You'd have to talk to somebody inside now as to how that actually turned out.
Is your family in Virginia this whole time?
So,
Your wife and your two
No.
daughters?
yeah, I'm sorry. So, no, when I went to, so we were in Boston. When I went to Iraq, they moved back to Florida,
Okay.
because that was a community that they knew and understood.
I didn't
But-
see Florida coming.
Yeah.
I know, I should have stayed
Do
in
you?
Boston.
Well, yeah, on the hindsight, they said they should have stayed a month, but the girls wanted to go back because their friends were there. But when you're not assigned there anymore, you're kind of outside looking in a bit, so it wasn't quite.
Well, that, and you would come visit from time to time.
Yeah, I
You
got
could
to come.
see him when he came in.
Yeah, but yeah, so they were there, and then when we came back,
So you're in DC and they're in Florida?
no, I went to Iraq.
Yeah, but.
I'm sorry.
But then when you get back.
So when I
you're
come
in the
back,
counter-
we all moved to Virginia.
Right,
they're
right,
all-
sorry.
They
we
moved
got
it from
confused.
Florida up to.
Everybody
Virginia.
consolidates up in Virginia, and we rent a
But there was
house.
an interlude when you were in Florida.
Correct.
Right,
Yeah, gotcha.
yeah. So, yeah, and then we spent 2 years at the NCTC, which was probably the hardest 2 years of my career.
Still as colonel?
still as a colonel, but it was hard because they were still trying, the NCTC was trying to figure out its real mission, what it was doing, and figure out the processes. So public policy is hard to begin with. When you're trying to figure out the organization structure and who's doing what for whom, who's responsible for what, who's giving the president's daily
terrorism?
briefing?
Yeah.
Who's doing it? Is that
Yeah.
the agency, or is this NCTC, or who's doing it? That's really, really, really hard stuff. So I would come home sometimes and go, I don't even know what I accomplished today.
I don't know how
I was
anybody
like,
did. I
oh.
mean, the pace of change at that time in our lives was so fast, so rapid. I mean, to define terrorism and define
Yeah.
how to fight it.
I would tell you, inside the
Yeah.
inside the NCTC, my personal opinion, it was glacial. That's what made it hard, is it was glacial. It was really hard to get anything done, and it's not because they're bad people, they're all just trying to figure out, and there were just so many competing interests.
Sure, yeah.
And significant competing interests, and.
That's bureaucracy, that's democracy for you.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
how
not designed to be
democracy's way
efficient.
forward.
Yeah, it's not designed to be
Yeah,
efficient.
right,
It,
yeah.
Yeah, it avoids
Sure.
tries to avoid the major mistakes, but it also doesn't give you the opportunity for the major successes always either, so. Yeah.
And what takes us from colonel in your career to the next step?
So, coming out of the NCTC, I get assigned to be the wing commander at the 27th Special Operations Wing at Cannon Air Force Base. So Cannon had been a fighter base forever, and it transitioned from F-111s to F-16s, and now it was on the BRAC list to close down. So it had been in a couple years in the shutdown phase when AFSOC had grown enough to where they wanted to move some units west. We needed a second location, so they wanted a western base. The politics between Alaska, California, and New Mexico played out, and New Mexico wins. So we didn't quite go all the way west, we went halfway west. And we wound up at Cannon, which is out in the middle of the Llano Estacado High Plains, 4,400 feet of eastern New Mexico on the grasslands. Didn't have the greatest reputation, wasn't the greatest for family life. And we had to figure out how to move units from Fort Walton Beach on the beach to now in the middle of the desert and make that happen. And I was the second wing commander out there. Tim Leahy had gone out first to do the transition from F-16s to SOF. And it's a 35,000 person community. The base is the largest employer, became the largest employer there. ACC fighters are officer-centric. SOF is enlisted-centric. So we turned their demographics within their community, their schools, completely upside down. What homes they could afford, and this, that, and the other. So between Clovis and Mortalis, they got whiplashed 180 degrees, and God bless them. They worked very, very hard. The civilian leadership, the companies, the communities, the churches, the schools worked very, very hard to try to make this a success. And it was just going to take a long time to do it. So we get out there to replace Tim and Kathy, and it is now a soft base. Tim had made the conversion, now I've got it to continue on. So we take it from a little over 2,000, and 2 years later we're at 5,000 people. We went from 5 squadrons to almost 20 squadrons. We have 4 groups: medical group, sport group, maintenance group, operations group. And the thing is, between Tim and I, and then Buck after me, the entire time the wing is in combat as well, deploying to combat while they're trying to build and move and build. And we had to take on a $1.8 billion military construction program that was phased in over the years. So our challenge was, in my time frame, we had $500 million in MILCON, and most bases, small bases as we were considered. And the size of the contracting organization would do 1 building every other year. At about 15 million, we had 500 million going under contract at once. It was magnificent. We were learning a lot. We were getting our heads crushed, but it was a heck of a lot of fun. And so when you become a wing commander, if you don't screw it up, you have a high probability of making general officer in this. So if you ask the question, what happened to make that transition, was the wing command and surviving that.
And this is 2010-ish?
Yeah, he showed me graduating.
Yeah.
In 11.
Yeah. And we could talk for hours about the 2 years.
We sure could, there's so much.
Yeah.
But at that point, are you thinking it's close to time we getting out? Or are you still thinking there's more work that needs to be done?
No, at that point in time, and when I sat down with John Wooster, who was the AFSOC commander at the time, when he visited me at the NCTC, he's the one who notified me that I was on the list to go to Canada. Wooster's a pretty interesting character. He's a great mentor. I love him to death. Very thoughtful man. There's nothing he hasn't thought 10 moves ahead. And it's a great exercise to sit down with him and think through. And I'd worked for him a couple times, and he came up and in his way, he said, we don't know each other very well and stuff like that, but I talked to Joe McGuire, who was my boss at the NCTC, who's a 3-star admiral, and he thinks pretty highly of you. So I have you here on this list. And he's showing me, he goes, but do notice it's in pencil, and I got a big eraser. So don't screw it up. Like, okay, got it. It was his way of keeping me humble. Okay, yeah, you're just one of many, but you just happen to be on the list card right now. So don't screw it up. But I think when he said that, when we were going out there, Cynthia talked, okay, there's more beyond this. Are we ready to take that ride? You don't take command unless you're ready to take the one after, the assignment after. You don't give up that experience. You don't rob somebody of that experience so that you can take it, get the glory, and then leave, right? So if we're going to do this, we've got to agree we're going to go, compete for the next level and see what happens. There's no guarantees, but we got to be willing to do that. And it's like, we're still having fun. We're still contributing. That was one of our criteria. We still feel like we're value add. We're going to keep after this and see where it goes.
Yeah, and that's about 24 years into your military career. So what do you do next?
So coming out of there, John Wooster, when I come out, I survived command, because every time he came out to visit, I wasn't interested in him coming off the plane. I was looking who's behind him, right? There's a high-powered colonel coming behind him. I'm going, oh, not turned out well for me.
Yeah.
I really pissed him off this time.
Yeah.
Because I pissed him off a couple of times. Then it would have been serious. But he never brought that high-powered colonel, so that was good. We survived, but he brought me back to the MAGCOM headquarters as a 1-star. And he told me he needed me to learn programming, how money worked and stuff like that. And I was like, I really want to be the director of operations. I don't want to do the other. He goes, well, you need to learn the other in order to do the. I was like, oh my God.
Another point in your career where you have to do the other to get back.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I told you, man, he couldn't have picked a worse assignment for me. This is going to be another one of those. But I did that, and then he changed out, and I just lost it.
Wow.
Eric File came in after him, so I worked for Eric for a year as the director of programs there at the headquarters, which is programming so we do a 5-year POM, Program Objective Memorandum, laying in the money, and then the budgeters refine it and then expend it year over year, and you redo the POM every year and stuff like that, and that's how you allocate resources and kind of do the planning. So we did that, and on a flight with General File, with Eric at the time, we were going up to Fort Bragg, and we're in the airplane, and he kind of leans over and goes, hey, what do you think you want to do next? So, if you're asking, I really would like to be the Deputy Commanding General of JSOC, if that's in the cards. And he just kind of looked, smiled, and goes, I think that would be good for you too. So he got General Votel, who was the commander at JSOC, to agree to take me as his deputy. So we packed up and we moved to Fort Bragg for 2 years, and into that level of the special ops community, the elite version of the community. And so we ran up in the operational, and I did a lot of the resourcing for them there. We had 3 flag officers and then the commanding general, and we took turns rotating in and out of the combat zones. I primarily was tagged with the resourcing and the running back home, but I would get to go over and spell the guys sometimes over the holidays and stuff like that. But we just sprinted for 2 years. You were never not connected, even on vacation. You had your classified kit to pop up and do whatever you needed and stuff like that. And it was probably some of the most interesting and rewarding work I got to do, not because of what they did, but it also gave me access to all the national laboratories and the wayback rooms of the national labs, which We're a very fortunate country. We're a
And-
very fortunate country.
And this is in the 20 teens,
Yep.
early 20 teens. Do you have your second star yet?
I got it, my second star is we were leaving there. So we were just on the backside of that tour.
What year was that you got your second star?
That would have been 14? Yeah, 14, 2014.
And were you thinking that it was time to step away at that point? What were your thoughts when you got
Yeah.
your second star?
I would say I was okay with it. I wasn't overly enthusiastic about it. I have to be honest. I was like, okay, you know, we'll go again. And part of it is ego. Part of it is when I worked for General Woolley and he was giving me inside baseball, he goes, yeah, making your first star is pretty cool, but if you don't get your second star, we're kind of saying we made a mistake giving you your first. It's like, that's pretty harsh. Yeah, but only 50% of one stars make the second star. But I was not going to be the mistake.
Yeah.
Right. I was going to work really hard not to be counted as the mistake, and I don't think that's actually true. You know, there's just the pyramid gets really, really, really small. So 0.1% of officers ever make it to 1 star.
Yeah.
So you know, when I got my first star, there were 10 other people just as qualified and capable, if not more so. My timing and whatever it is lined up. I didn't think that I was anything that special, and still don't. So, but the second star came, and I'll have to admit, I was starting to get tired. I grew up in the Army. By the time Cynthia and I retired in 18, I had moved 34 times in 53 years.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
getting tired.
Yeah.
But we were still going. We moved down to SOCOM. I became the J8 down there doing programming again, so that once you get into that world, it's hard to get it out of that world. And we did 2 years down in Tampa doing that.
Back to Florida.
Back to Florida, down to MacDill. I had a good time living down there. The job was okay, it was some good people, we got to get some good work done, but I would say it was not operations, so I was, and once you start down that path, you can kind of see your future is probably not getting back to operations. So you can start to read the writing on the walls there. And then we went through some churn, and I wound up then back on the air staff, being the programmer for the Air Force. And yeah, I think, yeah, I have to be honest, I was probably halfway on my way out at that point in time. My heart was less and less in it at that point.
And so you officially retired what year?
2018,
Okay. So that would be about 32 years.
32 years.
Math is hard for me. I'm a history professor, but I think I got that. So were you at peace with it when you made that decision? Do you think it was the right time now looking back on
I think it was the right time. I caught Cynthia by surprise when I came on and said, hey, I submitted my letter.
it?
We had been talking about it. I think she knew I was getting tired and starting to think about it. I hit a point in time, I think what did it for me is I was walking down the hall in the Pentagon, and I remember just thinking, I just need some peace. Like, okay, it's probably time. And I was thinking as well, and we talked, I said, okay, because we went through the list, she went through the list with me. I said, okay, I think we're in consideration for a 3rd star. Here are the potential opportunities if they offer and if you get confirmed in this. There's a lot of ifs. There's still other people out there in consideration. It wasn't a done deal. I'd been nominated for a 3-star position before, but it was a joint position. I knew who the Army competitor was. I go, yeah, they're just throwing my name in there. It's not that meaningful, not that serious, but it gets you in the conversation. And so here's the things that I think would be a potential, and the one that made the decision for me was when I thought, if they offered, big if, to be the commander of Air Force Special Operations Command, would that get me excited? And when I came back and said, not anymore,
Retired.
I was like, wow, that's hard to actually say out loud. That is really hard to say out loud. And I said, there's other folks who can do just as good and are more excited about it and have more energy right now, will do better for the force than I will just on my ego to go take it, because my heart just wasn't in it at the time, and I couldn't see that moving van again. And I think I just was, yeah, it was time to go. And there's some medical things going on, so it was just done.
Looking back on your military career, rising from Air Force, ROTC here at UT, way to Major General, so much I'm sure we didn't cover, so much I'm sure we couldn't cover. But when you look back on your military career, what do you want your kids to know, your two daughters? What do you want your grandkids to know? People 30, 40, 100 years from now when they look at this video, and it's weird to think that people will be doing research on YouTube, but they will. What do you want people who are trying to figure out about you and your life, what do you want them to know about your military service, looking back on it?
We had the opportunity to influence and make some major impacts along the way, and some programs that are still in existence within the command and in the Air Force. But if it comes down to the one thing, I would have people take a look at the careers of the people we got to run into and mentor, and what did they go on to achieve, and I hope that we had some small part in their success and what they accomplished, because I think that's the legacy that really lives on, that goes on and continues to make a difference. And when I look back at my career, I can name a significant list of people who had that impact on me, not only through as a kid and in high school, but then here at UT as well. And it wasn't just in the ROTC department. There were professors that I ran into that changed how you thought about things. You know, I thought it was, one of the things I learned from that is, and I used it throughout my career, is I'm not interested in what you think, I'm interested in how you think. Because we don't know what you're going to run into. But how you think through problem sets is incredibly important. And I had some great mentors who helped me figure that. I mentioned Jim Giblin, a professor at the Naval War College. And if we got a couple minutes, we were in a joint class, and he asked us, said, hey, what's your mental map of China? So, Marine Lieutenant Colonel raised his hand and gave his mental map of China, and he was done in about 10 minutes. Like, well, I can be a Marine, right? Raised my hand, and I was done in 15 minutes. Yeah, got him, right? Jim says, hey, that was great, guys, well done. Let me give you mine. An hour and a half later, he was hitting a stride.
Yeah.
When he was done, he had covered every country on the globe and how it was impacted or related back to China and our national security. And I was like, oh, I got to think differently. Jim was responsible for elevating my sight picture up to that next level. And that played out. When we deployed to Jordan to do missions in Western Iraq, and we were waiting for it to start off, and I had half the squadron there. My guys were asking, why are we here? What's going on? And what I was able to, I said, okay, I'm a big whiteboard guy. I'm visual. Okay, everybody come in. Got the whiteboard out and said, okay, here we are. And I started doing the command structure all the way up through the Joint Chiefs Staff, the GCCs, this, that, and the other. I did the Jim Gibling thing as best I could. And when we're done, the reaction back from Billy T, Chief Turner, goes, hey, here was the reaction. And he goes, they now understood. They got comfortable with what they were getting ready to do and why, because they got it explained. And that's what I say, the time that you're here at UT, and if you bump into certain professors, they're just gonna make that difference. You're gonna remember, okay, log that one in, and stuff like that, or what, books did they commend you to read, or this and that. And I'm a big reader, and to learn stuff like that. And there was, so that would be my long-winded answer to your question, but it was a big question.
Yeah, for sure. No, I know. I don't know how I would answer that question on camera for posterity. The only other thing would be right now, you are living in Virginia. You had a second, third, fourth career in the private sector after military service. What's next?
Well, I think
You are living in Virginia.
We are living in
Is that
Virginia.
accurate?
Yes, yeah.
Not
we-
Florida.
We live in Virginia. Thought we were going to retire here, because 80% of military families retire where their spouses are from. So, okay, we're coming back to Knoxville. It's awesome. Ready to go. Season tickets, here I come.
Yep. Yep.
Enjoy that. So we had actually looked out west. We had a lot picked out in Wind River. I was like, okay, good. I mean, give me an assignment. We'll start figuring this out, right?
Yeah.
So we were doing that, and I'm on the board of directors out at a company out west. I said, okay, yeah, we can make a life out of this, and we're driving back up 81 going home, and I said, yes, okay, here's that term, what? She goes, our daughters are UVA grads, they live in Virginia, they'll drift off eventually, I'm not leaving till they do.
Both of your daughters at UVA?
They're like, okay, so we're retiring in Virginia, I have new marching orders, let's go execute, right? So
Yeah.
we've been up there, and we love it up there, it's easy to get down here. My parents are retired in Williamsburg, Virginia, so they're just down the road, and fortunate to have both of them still with us. And so the second career, I didn't want to do anything DoD related. I'd grown up in the Army, career in the Air Force, wanted to figure out what those crazy civilians do for a living, So we're fortunate enough to dabble for a little bit, and I don't mean that pejoratively, just kind of survey and rest, which is another thing Wooster told me. He sent me a nice 3-page letter outlining what he thought, here's the progression in retirement if you pay attention.
Yeah.
When Donnie speaks, I pay attention. So we read that, and he goes, relax and rest, don't do anything for a year. You don't realize how tired you are. And that was very, very helpful. Then we started casting about and figuring out some things. So now I'm on the board here in Knoxville. I'm on the board for a national charity, the Jack and Jill Late Stage Cancer Foundation, which is a passion because we treat the families, not the cancer. So it's when a young couple, one of the parents has terminal cancer, and it's really about giving them as a family a time out from the disease to be a normal family and create lasting memories. It's a phenomenal opportunity that would present a big impact there. I've been on another board or two, and now I'm the CEO of a small tech startup. I'm going to see if I can do this business stuff, and we're hanging on, noses above the waterline, trying to break out on top, but learning a lot. Again, it continues that opportunity to keep learning and stay engaged and active in our community. I'm in the Rotary Club, which gets us involved in our local community and gets us to do some stuff. And then we could spend more time together and got to the great opportunity to remember while we started dating. Which is actually pretty cool.
Absolutely. I'm sure you have much more time these days.
Yeah.
Well, it was a pleasure meeting you. Thank you for coming in and sharing your
Thank you.
story with us.
I appreciate it.
And
Appreciate the
you can all
opportunity.
check out the story once we post it on our YouTube channel.